Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 4 of class. So this week we are going to actually dive into what some might consider, and you might argue, is sort of the beginning of the history of the United States, right? The colonial period that we've kind of talked about up until this point, all right, serves to provide a lot of context, a lot of interesting history, but you can't really call it the United States because technically speaking, that country did not exist yet. But it's going to exist by the time we get done with this week. So in some respects, right, we can say that this is where the history begins. But I like to broaden it, of course, and say, hey, United States history is what it is because of many of the things that transpired during the colonial era. So we can, agree to disagree on where we want to start that. But technically speaking, the country itself begins during this week's content, okay? And so we're going to be focusing in on the Revolutionary War and that era, and more specifically, I'm going to be focusing in on some of the what I call primary documents, early documents that I think were significant in bringing out both the war itself and obviously the country that we are today. So the two lectures that you will be listening at this week will be focusing on looking at these primary documents, and then we have a film on the war itself. But among other things, we're going to be looking at Thomas Paine's Common Sense, which actually came before the Declaration of Independence, and in many ways, you could argue that it expedited the issuing of the Declaration of Independence, in that many people who had not decided to support the revolutionary movement, after hearing some of Paine's arguments, many people, in fact, were stirred to support a move towards independence. And then, of course, in 1776, we get the Declaration of Independence. And then after the war, or sort of during it, as actually there was a discussion of a type of constitution that the colonial army and the Continental Congress would be governed under. But essentially, following the American Revolution, we, as the United States, will be governed by a constitution known as the Articles of Confederation. And from a strictly federal authority perspective, the Articles of Confederation were very weak. They didn't provide the federal government with much power. And a lot of that came from anxiety and fear over a strong centralized government. But as we will see, there were some inherent weaknesses with that. And ultimately, in the end, the Constitution, which we currently live under, will be created following the Constitutional Convention and its final ratification process. Okay. Now, I am not necessarily going to be going through each of the sections of the Constitution. I will be going through the first 10 amendments, which is known as the Bill of Rights. So one of the things I will ask that you do is to look through at least the first 3 articles of the Constitution, which stipulates the powers of the Congress or the legislative branch, the presidency or the executive branch, and then finally the judicial branch. There are other articles in there, but for the purposes of this course, I think it's okay if you just focus in on those first 3 articles as well as the first 10 amendments. Okay, so we got lots of things we're going to be talking about. These documents, we'll be talking about the American Revolution. We'll be asking a question this week about whether or not the American Revolution was a social revolution, and there's different degrees of opinion upon that and solid arguments on both sides. So I'll be interested to see where you guys fall on that. And so, of course, you do have your discussion boards for this week, so make sure you get to answering those. But we're going to be taking a look at a whole range of things, anti-federalists, federalists, and their debate over ratification of the Constitution, and just so many different things, okay? So a lot to cover this week and a lot to think through. So with that, I will stop talking. I'll let you guys get to thinking about it. And as always, if you have questions, contact me, let me know. Otherwise, go in peace, be warm and filled. May the force be with you, live long and prosper, and may the odds forever be in your favor. All right, guys, have a blessed week.